Greetings, my name is Owen O'Brien. I'm a BDM based out of the Melbourne office. In recent months, I've recorded a number of videos, each of them with a commercial slant to them. I started off with one on MedPick, which is a project-based approach to selling. It's the ability with which you can then easily and effectively qualify in and out of opportunities. You'll end up closing a lot more deals, and it really is a really powerful tool. I followed that up with something a bit more general in nature, a bit lighter in tone, and it was all around developing commercial awareness. Today, we've come to the end of the road, the end of the journey, the culmination of the trilogy. Something similar to Lord of the Rings, The Godfather. But unlike The Godfather Part 3, we're going to go out of here on a high. We're going to go out with something that the critics are going to love. This is all around building rapport. When you have a strong relationship with a customer, you tend to have a lot more influence with that person. They'll respect your advice, they'll respect your experience, and what you'll find is that they're more likely to value your contribution to the actual decision process. One of probably the quickest and most effective ways to build up that sales relationship is to actually then to build up a rapport around that. It enables smooth communication. Why? Because it means because people essentially are then at ease with each other and everything just flows out more simply. Typically, sometimes rapport, I suppose things click into place nice and easy, and some people find it easier than others, where you'll walk into a room, get chatting to someone, and everything sort of falls into place and everything is nice and smooth. Other times, you need to be a bit more deliberate in building rapport with that person. It doesn't all sort of gel from the get-go. Personally, this isn't something that I asked for. This was a gift that was handed to me from the gods up above. I've actually always found it quite easy to build rapport people. So the idea of the session is just to give you a few little tricks, techniques, and to show you how easy it is and something that you can work on to get that rapport being sort of part of your armory. Human beings are social animals. And that's why it's important, because communication with others is vital in how we then ultimately go and make a decision. Often we make these decisions without having all the information freely available to us of the choices and the consequences of what we face, not just in the world today, but even into the future. So if I'm saying to you, who would you talk to in the event that you were looking to buy a house, to get financial advice, or where you're thinking of sending the kids to school when they get out of kinder a year or two down the line? Just by asking that question, I guarantee in your mind you're thinking of a handful of go-to people, of confidants who you would go to get that information. Why do you go to them? You go to them because you trust them, because they will give you an unbiased, informed view, because that you know that they've got your best interests at heart. Typically, they're good listeners. And that's what you want to be. As a sales guy, you want to be the person who the customer views you as that person. And in this day and age, a lot of customers that are out there today are looking at someone who will come in and just listen to them. And that's part and parcel of the basis of building up a strong sales relationship. That's why I have it down the line. People buy from people they like. It's that simple. And that's the sort of mindset that you need to get into. And we'll get into this now as to how you can set that up. Even though the building rapport module is relatively short, I've still narrowed it down into the two areas. The art of communication and mirroring and matching. Think about people who can walk into a room of strangers and who in turn can engage with these people and emerge with the seeds for deep relationships and bonds. What you find, typically, they're great listeners. They're open. They're vulnerable. They're unconditionally friendly, and they can converse with anyone. Some people have this trait. Some people just sort of wish that they had. Mirroring and matching. Now, this is a bit more dangerous. This is sort of ninja style rapport building. It's a bit clandestine. I've started using it myself in the last year or two. It's powerful, but you sort of need to know what you're doing when you use this. It's based on a very, very powerful concept that people like people who are similar to themselves. Conversely, when people are not similar, it's more difficult to have a relationship with that person. And you can actually quickly develop rapport with a customer by mirroring and matching. And I'm going to show you how you do it. If you struggle with feelings of low self-worth, the chances are you're really going to find it difficult building rapport with others. We've all been there. I know certainly in my younger days, happens the odd occasion. You're in communication, you're in a meeting with a particular person. They may be difficult, maybe their demeanor, their title, their seniority, and you're just not gelling with that person. And maybe in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I don't deserve to be in this conversation. This person is superior to me. You need to get yourself out of that mindset. It's a confidence thing. Sometimes I think I've heard the phrase, was it fake it till you make it? Whatever it is, whatever string you have to your bow that'll help you get into that sort of frame of mind, get into that frame of mind. Otherwise, you'll struggle. You need to believe that you're worthy in order to share your ideas, but you also need to be in that position where if you need to be able to challenge an idea that doesn't maybe sit with your beliefs, to be able to push back. And even at its most basic, just be able to get that banter going between yourself, get people at ease with each other. Secondly, it's all around listening. A really important skill. I think the figure I've seen in the past is that over the course of a conversation, we would normally sort of absorb maybe 25 to 50% of the information that we hear. The key is to listen intently. It's to ask lots of questions, follow-up questions to remember key details. Really important part as well is that ability to revert back to previous conversations, things that were said in the past, to bring it up again. It makes a massive difference. So many people these days, I think what they're thinking, well, what am I going to say next? How am I going to interject into this conversation? Just listen to everything that's being said. Just keep. What's the phrase I think I heard from the kids? Use those listening ears. So at its most basic, that's it. Because this is how typically you learn to find commonalities with another person, to learn someone's likes, their dislikes, and eventually to understand deeply how they tick, how they work, how they think. So that's really what you need to be able to do. To be open, it's something I think, if I look back at my early days in sales, I always thought, I had to act in a particular way, and there was a certain amount of, you had to. I'm not saying that humour never had a place in the way I spoke, but there was a certain way you had to present yourself and to be. But what you'll find is, you get into that position, you end up in a conversation that can be quite transactional and hollow because you're just not being yourself. It's not genuine and they're not authentic conversations. So the whole idea is to be open, because we all have this sort of representative, this better version of ourselves that we send into these environments. So long ago I decided just go in there, and just be yourself. And I think that makes a world of difference. Shed the persona and just have the liberty just to be yourself, because it'll work in large settings, and really it'll work ultimately as a technique to build rapport. So they're the first three pieces that I want to talk about. Studies show, hands down, people's favorite topic of conversation is ourselves. Self-disclosure is just so gratifying. It just gives us this neurological buzz. Previous slide, I mentioned this whole idea of situations that we may end up in where might feel slightly uncomfortable, may I say inferior. It could be because of the person you're dealing with. Maybe the importance of the conversation. Could be the seniority of that person, their title. Just doesn't seem to gel. Always keep in mind, prior to these conversations, during these conversations, after these conversations, at our core, we are really much all the same. Doesn't matter how much money you've got in the bank. Doesn't matter where you're living, the suburb that you're in. Doesn't matter what car you drive. At the end of it all, people just want to be treated with a certain level of dignity and respect, and be dealt with in such a way, not because of what they have, but just because of who they are. If you go in with that open mind, you'll find it so much easier to build rapport. I'll go in, and anybody who knows me knows that I am not remotely technical. Doesn't faze me in the slightest. I've got enough stories in my songbook to be able to bring up to be able to ad-lib a technical conversation. But on a personal level, whether it's small talk, I'm probably more comfortable with small talk than I am with technical, but I'm a good listener. But I go in with that open mind that I'm just dealing with a human being at the end of the day, a living, breathing human being who's probably got the same needs, ambitions, desires that I do. Go in with that, makes it a hell of a lot easier. Research about the individual. It's just, a lot of people don't do it. It's there on LinkedIn. Find out where they worked in the past. Sometimes they keep the LinkedIn pretty brief, but sometimes I'll go into a bit of detail, projects they've worked on, sort of what rocks their boat. And you've got something straight away to play on and something to engage on. Because that's what you're going to do. You're going to engage with these people, not just on a professional level, but also on a personal level. I know a lot of the relationships that I've built up over time, and I have to say, hand on heart, I love going out and meeting people. I love meeting new people. That's what I'm sort of lucky that I'm able to sell off the back of that. But I've never gone into a room with any sense of dread. You go in with that open mind, share something about yourself, you find out something about so many other people. And really, off the back of it, rapport will be built every time of the day. And that's how you're going to build up more and more relationships. As I said earlier, I just want to spend a small bit of time on this whole concept of mirroring and matching. It's something I've incorporated into my own sales technique in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. I spent a bit of time researching it. It's really powerful. It works, but it's really dangerous. You want to be careful before you jump in with this sort of 2 feet. So I'll tell you more and you'll see where I'm coming from as to what can go sort of wrong. Mirroring is, I suppose at its most basic, it's mimicking. What you're doing is you're mimicking that other person. So what you're doing is you're actually closely following their speech patterns, their vocabulary, their body language, the tone and the tempo of their voice. Generally, it's actually an unconscious behavior. We're rarely aware that it's happening. Now, in this case, you are aware of it's happening because you are the person who's actually pushing this on the other person. But it's a sign, when it works, it's a sign that people are bonding. It's a sign that people are in sync. And it's building up it's building up that level of rapport and that level of trust. An example, if I'm sitting down, let's say I'm having a coffee with a customer, it could be something as simple as, do they have their hands on the table? Do they have their hands down by their side? Do they scratch their ear? Do they put their hands through their hair? If you subtly imitate them, that's through the body language. It may be that they're loud, they're gregarious, they put their hands in the air quite a bit. Or they may be softly spoken. They might be slow, deliberate, no level of exuberance. So what you're doing is you're sort of matching what they're doing. And it follows a profound biological principle. And that principle is that we fear what's different and we're drawn to what's similar. And it sends out a really powerful signal. The signal is this. The signal is, trust me. You and me, we're alike. That's really it. Why is it dangerous? Let's say if I meet a customer with an Indian heritage, there's no point in me putting on an Indian accent because I'm going to end up in a world of trouble and they're going to see straight through it. Now, that's an extreme example, but this actually does work. And once you're attuned to the dynamic of how this works, you'll see it everywhere. You walk into a restaurant and you'll see couples who are just hitting it off. Things are going really well. And it's couples walking in the street in sync. You see couples at a park bench in a park, the way that they sit, the way they cross their legs at the same time, nodding their heads at the same time. You see this everywhere. And people subtly do like it when others imitate them. And it goes back, I think there was a number of tests done. I saw one test, I think it was in Holland. The exact percentage number, I can't tell. But what happened really was this. There was 2 things. With one test, they had 2 sets of waiters. One set of waiters, after the order was given to them by the customer, would repeat that order back to them. The other set of waiters just wrote it down, said nothing and went back. Who got the biggest tips? The people who got the biggest tips were the people who repeated that order back to them. In another example, it was this. What they found is that when you order a meal at a restaurant, if the waiter, whether they're saying this sincerely or whether they're just using it because they know that this is a way of making a better tip, when you make a choice, if they in turn say, that's a great choice, that's my favorite on the menu as well, they will actually they invariably get a bigger tip than what others will get. So that's what mirroring and matching is. Like what I said, really dangerous, worth having a look at, but it does work. And it's worked for me. So keep an eye on that and see, can you incorporate it? Maybe try it with friends and family before you start doing it with customers, but give it a go. In summary, just a couple of points. It's both difficult and awkward to ask tough questions of a customer when you actually haven't earned the right to ask those questions in the first place. The only way you're going to earn the right is by building up a certain level of trust and rapport with the customer. You need to do it early. That's really the key to this whole thing. With it, you can ask those tough questions. You can joke around with the customer. You can presume things of the customer. Without it, you're nowhere. Listening, it's so important. I've said it, I've seen it so many times. Too many people nowadays They just want to get their point across. They're not listening. All the nuggets of information are on the other side of the table. You're not going to say anything that's going to make you learn anything more in this conversation. Let the other person talk. Listen to what they're saying. Listening, it really highlights the esteem that you hold that other person in. Since many people are poor listeners, just by you exhibiting good listening skills, you're signaling to other people that you are interested and they are worthy. It's so important. I'm a very cultured individual, so I finished off with a quote from Ernest Hemingway. Have a read. I think it's appropriate. I think it's important all around listening and the importance of listening. That's the end of my 3 videos. After you've listened to them, I'd love to get a bit of feedback. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, if I can help in any way, I'm more than happy to do so. I mean that genuinely. And thanks for listening.